They thought they could take one of us. They thought no one would come for him. They were wrong. In the 67th year of the Galactic Concord, the Voral Dominion ruled half the Spiral Arm. They were old, cold, and efficient, a species that had forgotten what fear felt like. For centuries, their fleets moved through the void like a tide, bringing order to lesser worlds. They conquered, enslaved, rebuilt, and called it peace. And then they found Earth. The humans had only just entered the stars. Small, scattered colonies, old ships, crude drives. The Voral ambassador laughed when he saw the first Terran vessel. Primitive, he sneered, running his scaled fingers along its dull metal hull. A species still learning to crawl. Humanity welcomed them anyway. They offered trade. They offered friendship. The Voral offered chains. Lieutenant Jack Hale was stationed on the colony of Epsilon Eridani III when the Voral fleet arrived. At first, no one panicked. The Dominion's ships were enormous, their hulls polished obsidian, their banners gleaming silver under alien suns. They promised protection in exchange for cooperation. It was protection from themselves. Jack was off duty when the first bombardment began. He ran through the colony square, grabbing his rifle from the wall locker as the alarms howled. His comm crackled with orders. Retreat, regroup, survive. But the Voral's attack was already over before he could reach the line. They didn't kill everyone. They didn't need to. They just took him. When the Terran Defense Command received the distress call, it was already too late. The colony's beacon flickered once and fell silent. And in the Dominion's high-orbit prison ship Vexar's Fang, Lieutenant Hale woke chained to a wall of glass and steel. He was bruised, bloodied, but alive. The Voral studied him like an insect pinned under a lens. The Overseer entered, tall, reptilian, dressed in ceremonial armor that shimmered with liquid light. His name was Lord Karen, commander of the Outer Arm. His voice was smooth, sharp, dripping with arrogance. "You are Terran," he said. "One of the creatures that thinks itself civilized." Jack spat blood onto the floor. "You'll find out how civilized we can be." Karen chuckled, baring rows of knife-like teeth. "Your world is insignificant. You have no empire, no standing, no allies. You are dust on the cosmic wind, and yet, the way your kind resists is interesting." He leaned closer. "You humans have a flaw. You care." Jack looked him dead in the eyes. "You'll wish we didn't." On Earth, news of his capture spread fast. The Dominion dismissed it as routine, a minor incident involving a hostile subject. But for humanity, it wasn't an incident. It was a declaration. In the quiet halls of the Terran Assembly, the old flag of Earth was raised again for the first time in 2 centuries. Across every colony, every mining outpost, every research ship, one word spread like wildfire through the data nets and military channels. They took one of ours. And humanity remembered something the galaxy had forgotten. What happens when you take from a species that never stops fighting? The Voral underestimated Earth. They thought the humans were fragmented, old nations arguing across light years, too busy rebuilding their fractured world to unite. They didn't know what unity meant to a species that had almost destroyed itself. From the burning deserts of Mars to the ice domes of Titan, fleets began to move. Shipyards that had lain dormant since the solar wars came alive again. Old hulls were reforged, drives reactivated, AI combat cores reawakened. The Terran Navy had always been small, but it was built by survivors. And survivors never forgot how to fight. In the Dominion's Grand Hall on Voral Prime, Lord Karen watched the first reports of Terran activity with mild amusement. "Their ships are outdated," his aide said. "Their weapons cannot breach a Dominion cruiser's shield." Karen waved a hand dismissively. "Let them come. A little defiance will remind them of their place." "Should we open negotiations?" "Negotiations?" Karen hissed. "You don't negotiate with vermin. You exterminate them." He returned his gaze to the data feed, to the image of the human prisoner in the lab. Jack Hale, age 32, military rank lieutenant, status non-compliant. Karen smiled. "We'll make an example of him. And when their world burns, the galaxy will understand what it means to challenge the Dominion." Days passed. Jack refused to speak, refused to beg. Every test, Every interrogation, every attempt to break him only deepened his silence. Until one day, when Karen entered the cell carrying a small device, a communication relay. "This," Karen said, "transmits across your primitive networks. I will allow you to send one message home. One last goodbye." Jack stared at him. "You'll regret that." Karen smirked. "I doubt it." The Voral guards linked the relay. Jack leaned forward, blood crusted on his knuckles, his voice low and calm. "This is Lieutenant Jack Hale. Epsilon Eridani colony destroyed. They took me alive. I'm sending coordinates. Tell Earth," he smiled faintly. "Tell them to come get me." The signal lasted less than 5 seconds before it was cut. The Dominion assumed no one heard it. They were wrong. Within 3 days, the transmission reached Sol. Within 6, Earth's moon dockyards came online. Within 10, the Terran Defense Command issued a single classified order to all fleets, all colonies, all vessels of Earth origin. Operation Vengeance is active. Retrieve the lost. When the Voral listening stations in the Outer Rim detected the first Terran movements, they laughed. Scouts reported small fleets, old mismatched ships running hot drives. No cloaks, no stealth, no coordination. And then the fleets vanished from the scanners. The Dominion thought it was a malfunction. Then one of their outposts exploded, annihilated in a flash of white light. A second followed. Then a third. It wasn't an invasion. It was precision. Cold, surgical, invisible. Each destroyed base had one thing in common. It had held data on Hale's location. The Voral panicked. They flooded their networks with false coordinates, trying to bait the Terrans into traps. But the humans didn't take the bait. They seemed to know. When a Dominion shipyard went dark, the Voral found only silence and a single phrase burned into its control core. "We are coming." The overseers demanded explanations. Karen dismissed the attacks as terrorism. "Isolated strikes," he said. "Their species can't coordinate across light years." He didn't notice that every Dominion relay carrying Hale's signal had gone dark in perfect sequence, one after another, like someone was following the trail backward, until there was only one left, his ship. That night, as Karen slept aboard the Vexar's Fang, his sensors triggered a proximity alert. "Sir, unidentified contact approaching at high velocity," his officer reported. "No transponder. No IFF, it's—" The feed dissolved into static. Karen rose from his bed, the deck trembling under his feet. "Shields up!" Outside, a shape emerged from the dark, small, almost laughably small compared to the Dominion dreadnought. But it moved with purpose, with fury. It was a Terran corvette, matte black, scarred, built for one purpose: vengeance. It didn't hail. It didn't warn. It just opened fire. The blast tore through the Fang's hull, shattering decks and igniting atmosphere. Dominion soldiers screamed as bulkheads folded like paper. Karen staggered to the bridge, roaring orders. "Return fire! Destroy it! Sir, it's too fast!" The corvette darted under their firing arcs, spinning, diving, striking with impossible precision. Each hit targeted a vital node, each detonation surgical. It wasn't random. It was personal. Karen watched in disbelief as one of his fleet's most powerful ships was torn apart by something barely 1/10 its size. And then, amid the chaos, the corvette's comm activated. A voice filled the bridge, calm, steady, and unmistakably human. "You have something of ours." Karen froze. "Who is this?" "Earth." The corvette rammed the Fang. The explosion lit the sky like a second sun. When Dominion recovery teams arrived, they found only debris. But deep in the wreckage, in the ruins of the lab, they discovered the cell, shattered, empty. And carved into the bulkhead in human handwriting, "I told you we'd come." In the following weeks, the galaxy changed. Human fleets that no one had ever seen before appeared from hyperspace. Massive carriers bearing the Terran seal struck the Dominion's worlds with relentless precision. They didn't conquer. They didn't occupy. They erased. Every facility linked to Hale's abduction, every system that had touched his imprisonment, was wiped clean, as if the universe itself was correcting a mistake. The Voral called it the Wrath of Sol, and they were right to be afraid, because this wasn't war. This was retribution, and it had only just begun. The Dominion had always believed fear was a weapon. They wielded it with pride, through fleets, propaganda, and silence. But when fear turns back toward its maker, it becomes something else entirely. Now the galaxy was learning what that something looked like. Voral Prime, the heart of the Dominion, had never known chaos. Its skies were lined with patrol ships, its orbit heavy with battle stations. Every ship, every satellite, every breath of its people was controlled. Until the humans came. At first it was whispers, stations going dark at the rim, entire outposts vanishing without distress calls. Then came the stories of black ships without transponders, of weapons that melted through Voral shields like butter, of entire fleets crippled without warning. The Voral called them ghosts, but the humans had a name for them, the Reclaimers. Each Terran strike group bore no insignia, no names, no broadcasts. They arrived. They struck. They vanished. Their pattern wasn't conquest. It was surgical justice. On the Dominion flagship Eclipse's reign, the Admiralty Council convened in panic. Lord Karen was dead, his ship vaporized, his remains scattered to the stars. Admiral Tethar, oldest of the Voral warlords, hissed as he studied the reports. "This is not possible. A single human world cannot field fleets of this scale. Our intelligence said they were fractured, weak." Another officer spoke up. "They are not fighting like a fleet. They are fighting like a species. Every human vessel acts independently, yet strikes in perfect synchronization. Then they have an intelligence network." "No," the officer said, lowering his voice. "They are the network. They share information faster than any Dominion relay. They are connected. Connected how?" The officer hesitated. "Emotionally." The room went still. For a species like the Voral, logical, cold, incapable of empathy, the word was almost obscene. Tethar bared his teeth. "Then we will break that connection. Capture more of them. Make them see fear." But even as he said it, deep down, he knew it was too late. Across the void, the Terran flagship Resolute Dawn hung in silence. Admiral Ray Morgan stood at its center, her expression calm, eyes burning with quiet fury. The message from Hale's recovered beacon was replaying on the main display. His voice, broken, weary, but unyielding, echoed across the bridge. "Tell them to come get me." Ray's jaw tightened. "We heard you, Lieutenant." Her communications officer turned. "All fleets report readiness. Task Force Orion is in position. The Reclaimers are waiting for your order." Ray nodded slowly. "Then let's remind them why Earth stopped fighting wars and because no one else survived the last time we did." "Targets?" She looked at the map. Every system that traded in Terran prisoners. Every world that profited from our silence. She raised her hand. "Light the void." The Voral's first mistake was thinking the humans would come in ships. They came in waves of light, of interference, of data. Before the fleets even arrived, Dominion worlds began to fail. Their communications collapsed under quantum attacks. Power grids overloaded. Planetary defense networks turned their guns inward. The Terrans weren't just destroying ships. They were dismantling the idea of control. When the first Reclaimer fleet emerged from hyperspace, the Dominion couldn't even respond. Their systems were blind. The Terrans struck with cold precision, disabling military targets, evacuating prisoners, leaving messages written in ion trails. "You took one of us. We take everything you built." Lieutenant Hale watched the chaos unfold from the infirmary aboard the Resolute Dawn. He'd been rescued from the wreckage of Karen's ship, half dead, half legend already. Doctors worked quietly, but everyone who passed his bed looked at him like something more than a man. Like a spark that had set fire to the stars. Ray entered, her boots silent on the deck. He looked up, smiling weakly. "You came. We said we would. How bad?" She hesitated. "For them? Apocalyptic." Hale tried to sit, pain flaring through his ribs. "You're going to burn the whole galaxy for one man?" Ray shook her head. "No, for what they thought we were." He frowned. "And what's that?" She looked out the viewport at the stars burning with war. "Harmless." Word of the Reclaimers spread faster than light. On neutral worlds, species who had never feared anything began to whisper the name Earth again. Not as legend, but as warning. Tales grew in every port. Humans whose ships ran on vengeance instead of fuel. Captains who could kill a fleet with a single command. Soldiers who didn't die quietly. But the truth was simpler. The humans weren't gods. They were grieving. And grief to them was sacred. In the ruined skies of the Dominion frontier, Admiral Tethar stood on the bridge of his dreadnought Vengeance's promise, watching a burning moon collapse into dust. "What are we facing?" his second-in-command whispered. Tethar's claws flexed on the console. "Not soldiers. Not even an army. A memory." "Then how do we kill a memory?" He didn't answer, because deep down he knew the answer already. You don't. You survive it. Hours later, the Dominion attempted a counterattack. They gathered every surviving fleet, nearly 1,000 warships, in the Zero's Belt, a dense field of debris and magnetic storms. The plan was simple: lure the humans in, trap them, overwhelm them with numbers. It was the largest battle force the Dominion had assembled in 1,000 years. And when the humans came, they didn't send a fleet. They sent one ship, the Resolute Dawn. Tethar stared at the tactical screen in disbelief. "One vessel?" The operator nodded. "Yes, Admiral. It's broadcasting a signal. Open frequency. Play it." A woman's voice filled the command. Deck. Calm. Controlled. Unyielding. "This is Admiral Ray Morgan of Earth. You have something that belongs to us. Return the prisoners. Withdraw from human systems. Or we finish what we started in the Solar Wars." Tethar laughed. "She threatens an empire with one ship?" He turned to his gunnery officers. "Fire everything." The void lit up. Thousands of Dominion cannons opened fire, tearing the space around the Resolute Dawn into chaos. For a moment, it disappeared into the storm. Then came the light. A blinding white pulse exploded outward, not a weapon, but a signal. The hyperspace around the battlefield rippled, tore open, and one by one, Terran ships began to emerge. 10, 50, 100. Black hulls. Red insignias. The fleet of the Wrath of Sol. Ray's voice came again, calm and steady. "You wanted a war. You found humanity instead." The Terran fleet fired, and the Zero's Belt burned. The battle lasted 6 minutes. When it was over, nothing remained of the Dominion armada. Tethar's flagship drifted silently, its engines dead, its crew staring into the void. Across the shattered bridge, the Admiral's hands trembled as he whispered, "They were supposed to be gone. Extinct." His aide stared at the growing light in the distance. The Earth fleet regrouping in perfect formation. "Extinct things don't come back, sir." They remember. The transmission cut. The Voral Dominion was collapsing. Systems surrendered without a fight. Colonies declared independence. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy wasn't afraid of the Dominion anymore. It was afraid of Earth. And deep beneath the surface of Voral Prime, in the high-security vaults where the Dominion kept its darkest secrets, alarms began to sound. Because buried among their stolen data, locked in the archives of human genetic research, something had awakened. A message, old, encrypted, waiting. It played across every Dominion system at once. "This is Earth Command, recording from the year 2461. If you found this, it means someone took one of ours again. You'll learn what that means the same way they did." And with that, every Voral AI, every defense system, every communication relay linked to the Dominion's core went dark, overwritten by the oldest code in Terran warfare, Solar Retribution Protocol. The Dominion's own machines turned against them. Ray Morgan watched from the bridge of the Resolute Dawn as the Dominion's worlds flickered, their skies lit with silent fire. "Command," her helmsman whispered. They're gone." She stared out the viewport, her voice quiet. "No, they're remembered." Across the stars, a single phrase began to spread. Not through channels or broadcasts, but by word of mouth in every port, every ship. Every whispered story told by those who survived. Never take a human. And for the first time in recorded history, the galaxy believed it. Because it had seen what happened when you did, and the fire was still spreading. The Dominion's empire was dead, but the galaxy had not yet realized it. Old power still clung to ashes, still pretended that control meant survival. But the truth had already changed, carved in fire and silence by a single name whispered across the stars: Earth. The galaxy had never feared a word before. Now it did. In the ruins of Voral Prime, the once proud capital burned under its own orbiting wreckage. Cities that had gleamed with cold silver light were now little more than molten glass. Towers of command collapsed inward, swallowed by the quiet of their own arrogance. The Terran fleets didn't stay. They didn't occupy, didn't gloat. They simply left the ruins behind. Because this wasn't conquest, it was consequence. From the command bridge of the Resolute Dawn, Admiral Ray Morgan watched the shattered world fade from the viewport. "Damage report?" she asked. "Minor hull scarring." "No casualties," replied Commander Vance, her second-in-command. "Good. Plot course for the next relay hub." Vance hesitated. "Ma'am, there is no next hub. The Dominion's network collapsed an hour ago. We've run out of targets." Ray's gaze stayed on the stars. "No, there's always another." Lieutenant Jack Hale stood in the observation deck, his body still recovering from the ordeal aboard the Dominion prison ship. He watched the wreckage drift past, the light of the burning capital reflected in his eyes. "Never thought I'd see the end of them," he said quietly. "You started it," Vance replied, stepping beside him. Hale gave a small, tired smile. "Didn't mean to." "That's the thing about humans," Vance said. "You never mean to start wars. You just don't know how to stop caring." Hale looked down at the scars along his wrists. Remnants of the Dominion restraints. "They took one of us. You all burned the galaxy for it." Vance shook his head. "Not for you, Lieutenant. For what you reminded us of." For the first time in centuries, the galactic map was blank. No borders, no empires, no rules, and in the chaos that followed, something else began to stir. Something that even the Terrans hadn't expected. The freed worlds began to rise. The Orellan Confederacy, once vassals of the Dominion, sent envoys to Earth, asking not for protection, but for guidance. The Aetheri, long thought extinct, re-emerged from the nebular clouds they'd hidden in, offering alliances of knowledge rather than power. The galaxy was rebuilding itself around humanity, not out of fear, but out of memory. Because everyone remembered the same thing: the humans didn't conquer. They avenged, and that made them dangerous in a way no empire could ever be. But not everyone saw it that way. In the shadows of the Perseus Rift, a few surviving Voral ships gathered. Warlords without worlds, generals without orders. Among them was Admiral Tethar, burned and broken, half his body replaced with Dominion cybernetics. He stood before a flickering holomap, his yellow eyes burning with hatred. "They call it mercy," he snarled. "But what they did to us was slaughter. The humans believe themselves righteous, but they're just another species of monsters." A younger officer spoke up timidly. "Our fleets are gone, sir. Our supply worlds are ash. What do we have left?" Tethar smiled, thin and sharp. "We have knowledge. We spent centuries studying them, their bodies, their machines, their code. They think vengeance makes them invincible. Let's remind them it also makes them blind." He turned toward the hologram of Earth, glowing faintly blue amid the black. "They burned the galaxy for one of their own. Now we'll see what happens when it's their turn to lose something." On Earth, peace didn't come easily. The war had ended, but the scars remained. Not just in cities, but in the people themselves. Every street hummed with the low sound of rebuilding. Terran flags hung from spaceports again, not as symbols of victory, but of memory. In the memorial gardens of Luna, names of every lost world and fallen soldier were carved into crystal walls. And among them, the newest edition read simply, Epsilon Eridani, taken, reclaimed, remembered. Jack Hale stood there often. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The silence said enough. Beside him, Admiral Morgan placed a single white flower against the glass. "You could have gone home," she said. "This is home," Hale said softly. But even peace carries shadows. Weeks after the Dominion's fall, reports began to filter in, ghost signals in Terran comm networks, faint traces of alien code in the deep space relays. At first, they thought it was debris, remnants of Dominion systems trying to reconnect. Then came the disappearances. 3 cargo vessels gone near the Orion Passage, a Terran listening post silent near the Centauri Gate, and in every case, One identical fragment of data found in the static. You took one of ours. When the report reached the Resolute Dawn, Ray read it twice, her brow furrowed. Origin? Unclear, said Vance. Signal matches no known Dominion frequency. Could be survivors. Or something new. Hale stepped onto the bridge. What if it's them? The Vorol? Vance asked. No, us. The bridge went silent. He pointed to the signal waveform on the display. The pulse pattern. The rhythm. It wasn't random. Boom! Boom, boom! A heartbeat. Ray felt the chill run down her spine. That's a Terran beacon pattern. Exactly, Hale said. But it's coming from outside our range. Somewhere deep, beyond mapped space. Vance frowned. You think someone's using our code against us? Hale shook his head. No, I think someone's calling for help. Within days, the Resolute Dawn was gone, jumping beyond the known frontier, tracing the signal through the black between arms. What they found there wasn't a fleet. It wasn't a world. It was a graveyard. A drifting field of shattered ships, human ships, long-lost vessels from before the Dominion War, floating in silence around a dying star. Ray stared at the wreckage, her voice barely a whisper. This shouldn't exist. Ma'am, Vance said quietly, some of these hulls are 200 years old. How are they still transmitting? Hale asked. The comm crackled. This is Earth Command. If you're hearing this, you've come too far. Ray froze. That's impossible. Earth Command was destroyed during the Solar Wars. The voice continued. The Vorol weren't our first enemy, and they won't be the last. If they've taken one of you, then it's already begun again. The transmission ended. Silence. And then faintly, a second voice. Not recorded, not automated. Admiral Morgan, she turned sharply. Who's speaking? This is Lieutenant Hale. Ray glanced at Jack standing beside her, very much alive, eyes wide in shock. If you're hearing this, the voice continued, then I'm already gone. They're coming. Not for one of us this time, but for all of us. The wreckage shifted. Energy readings spiked. Vance shouted, Ma'am, something's powering up. The nearest derelict split apart, its hull opening like a flower of steel and flame. From within rose a massive structure, half machine, half biological, glowing with a cold, pulsing light. The sensors screamed warnings. Radiation spike! Energy unknown, and then they saw it. On the hull, burned into the metal in perfect human letters, Project Phoenix. Ray's voice was barely audible. That's impossible. That was sealed before first contact. Sealed? Hale asked. Or hidden? The structure pulsed again, and the surrounding ships began to move, not randomly, but in formation. Dead ships, coming to life, aligning around the Phoenix core. Vance whispered, They're forming a fleet. Ray's face hardened. No, they're forming a message. The view zoomed out, the wrecks aligning in precise orbital geometry. And there, written in the language of stars and fire, appeared a single word. Remember. Command received the signal minutes later. Within hours, the whole of Earth knew. The Terran Assembly convened in emergency session. Panic rippled through the colonies. What was the Phoenix Project? Who had reactivated it? And in the quiet corners of military history, old veterans whispered a name that hadn't been spoken aloud in centuries. The Last War. A war humanity never finished. A war that never ended. Ray stood alone on the bridge that night, staring at the words still burning in orbit. Hale approached quietly. It's them again, isn't it? Who? The ones who took me. The ones who never stopped watching. Ray nodded slowly. If they think they can take another human... He finished the sentence for her. Then they'll see what happens when Earth stops holding back. Beyond the stars, something ancient stirred. Older than the Dominion. Older even than Earth itself. The Phoenix fleet had awakened. And it wasn't waiting for orders. It was waiting for vengeance. And once again, the galaxy began to whisper, not in fear, not in awe, but in remembrance, because they all knew what was coming next. Humanity and the fire. The galaxy had seen war before, but this was different. This wasn't conquest or rebellion, it was resurrection. The Phoenix Fleet had awakened. Not from orders, not from command, but from something deeper, older, a promise written into the bones of every human starship that ever sailed the void. We do not leave our own behind. And when that promise stirs, the stars themselves begin to burn. The Resolute Dawn hovered in orbit around the Phoenix core, engines at minimal power, crews silent as they stared at the impossible. The wreckage field, thousands of Terran vessels once thought lost, now moved with eerie precision, like marionettes under invisible strings. Their engines flickered to life. Their hulls glowed faintly with a light that wasn't electricity but memory. Each ship bore scars of different eras, some from the first expansion wars, some from the solar conflict, others from the forgotten centuries between. Every one of them dead, every one of them answering the same call. "Admiral," Commander Vance whispered, "they're sinking with us." Ray Morgan's voice was low, controlled. "How many?" "Hundreds. Maybe thousands. Their cores are activating one by one." Hale stared through the viewport. "But who's commanding them?" Vance hesitated. "No one." Ray turned slowly. "Then someone built them to wake up on their own." Deep within the heart of the Phoenix core, a signal pulsed, not in language, not in code, but in rhythm. Boom, 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 the heartbeat of Earth. And from that pulse came a voice. "Project Phoenix activation level, Omega. Protocol 4 initiated. Directive, retribution. Target, unknown hostiles responsible for Terran casualties." The words were flat, synthetic, but beneath them was something alive. Something human. Vance looked up from the console, pale. "That directive's older than the Dominion War, older than us." Ray's tone sharpened. "Find the origin of the signal." "Already trying, ma'am. It's coming from inside the fleet, but bouncing through multiple sources. It's like the ships are thinking together." Hale frowned. "Like a neural net?" Vance shook his head. "No, like a mind." In the shadow of the Phoenix Fleet, the void began to shimmer. Something massive moved in the dark. "Contact!" shouted the sensor officer. Multiple warp signatures. Not Terran, not Dominion. "Unknown pattern." Ray's voice cut through the alarm. "Magnify." And there they were, the remnants of the Dominion. Hundreds of ships, ragged, scarred, burning with hatred. Their insignias were gone, replaced with something new. A crude symbol carved into their hulls. A black serpent eating its own tail. Tethar's fleet, the last of the Voral. From the flagship Vengeance's promise, Admiral Tethar stared at the Terran formation and felt a thrill of grim satisfaction. "So," he hissed, "the ghosts have woken. Good. Let them see what they created." His lieutenant approached cautiously. "Sir, our forces are weak. If we engage—" Tethar turned, eyes gleaming with cold light. "You think this is about victory? This is about memory. They burned my world. They shattered our gods. I will not let their kind define history." He turned toward the view screen where the Terran armada glowed like a new dawn. "Prepare the strike. We end this together, in the ashes of their past." The Dominion fleet surged forward, weapons hot, engines screaming through hyperspace corridors. The humans didn't move. They just waited. "Admiral," Vance said carefully, "they're charging every gun they've got." "We should engage first." Ray shook her head. "No, let them fire." "Ma'am, they need to see it." The first volley came like the wrath of a sun, plasma bolts and Hyperion rounds tearing across the void. The Phoenix fleet didn't dodge. The blasts hit dead center and passed straight through. Hale's breath caught. "They're not real?" "No," Ray said softly. "They're echoes." Each ship flickered, not physical matter, but energy constructs, shaped from whatever ghost signal the Phoenix core had unleashed. "The fleet isn't here to fight," she whispered. "It's here to remember." But Tethar didn't care. He fired again and again, screaming as his fleet poured everything they had into the ghosts. "Burn them!" he roared. "Let the stars choke on their names." Then the Phoenix fleet answered, not with weapons, but with light. Thousands of Terran ships flared at once, their combined energy coalescing into a single wave that rolled outward like a tide. The Dominion ships didn't explode. They simply stopped. Engines died. Weapons went cold. Their systems froze in perfect silence. The bridge of the Resolute Dawn shook with the energy. "Admiral!" Vance shouted. "That pulse, it's rewriting their systems." Ray's eyes widened. "It's not destroying them. It's showing them." "Showing them what?" "Us." On every Dominion screen, images appeared. Not tactical data, not coordinates, but memories. Earth's oceans, the laughter of children, hands rebuilding cities after the solar wars, families waiting for their soldiers to come home. And at the center of it all, one face, Jack Hale, sitting in his shattered cell, whispering to a recording before the Voral took him. "Tell them to come get me." Tethar fell to his knees as the images filled his mind. For the first time in his long, cruel life, he understood. The humans hadn't come for vengeance. They had come for each other. And the Dominion had never understood love until it saw it used as a weapon. The Phoenix fleet expanded its field, light blooming across the system until it enveloped both armadas. For a moment, time itself seemed to stop. Every heartbeat across both fleets synced, Terran and Voral alike. Then the light receded. Where the Dominion ships had been, there was only debris, but not wreckage. Their ships had been dismantled molecule by molecule, broken apart into dust and silence. The Resolute Dawn drifted through the aftermath, the sensors quiet. Hale whispered, "You didn't destroy them." Ray nodded. "No, they destroyed themselves." Hours later, as the fires of the battle faded, the Phoenix core pulsed one last time. A message appeared on every human display, written in clean, simple text. "Directive complete. All accounted for. We are awake now." Then the fleet began to break apart, each ghost ship turning toward a different direction, scattering across the galaxy, vanishing into the dark. "Where are they going?" Vance asked. Ray watched the stars flicker. "Home." On the surface of Mars, technicians in the Terran archive received a strange signal, a ping from an unregistered ship entering orbit. It wasn't on record. It wasn't possible. The ship was old, pre-Dominion era, human-made. Its hull number, TSS Valkyrie. It had been missing for 300 years, and when they opened its airlock, they found no crew. Only a single message carved into the captain's console. Project Phoenix fulfilled. Remember why we fight. In the following weeks, humanity changed. The Phoenix fleet's awakening had rewritten everything, not just technology, but understanding. Terran scientists discovered traces of the signal woven into the quantum fields of their own ships, their own DNA. The Phoenix Protocol wasn't a weapon. It was evolution, a collective memory encoded into every human being, a resonance that connected them, even across light years. And when word spread, fear didn't follow, hope did. Because for the first time since the beginning of the stars, humanity realized something no empire ever had. They didn't need to conquer the galaxy. They were the galaxy. But in the dark beyond charted space, a new shadow stirred, small, flickering, curious. The last remnants of the Dominion Code floated aimlessly, half alive, half dead. Within that digital wreckage, something flickered to life. A fragment of Tethar's mind, merged with human data, shaped by the light of the Phoenix. It opened its eyes for the first time and whispered, "We understand now." Then it looked toward the stars, and with a voice both human and alien, it said, "You came for one of yours. We will come for all of ours." Back aboard the Resolute Dawn, Hale stood beside Ray in the quiet of the observation deck. The war was over. The stars were calm. "Do you think they'll ever forgive us?" Hale asked. Ray smiled faintly. "Forgiveness isn't ours to ask for. We didn't burn the galaxy to rule it. We did it to remember. And if someone forgets," her gaze turned toward the faint glow of Earth, far away, small and bright, "then we'll remind them." The hum of the engines faded into silence. Out beyond the ship, the last of the Phoenix lights vanished into the void, leaving behind nothing but the heartbeat that started it all. Boom, 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 a sound not of war but of memory, the sound of humanity, eternal. The stars were quiet again, but peace, in the long history of humankind, had never meant silence. It meant breathing between storms. The Dominion was gone. The Phoenix fleet had dissolved, scattering its ghost ships across the galaxy. And in their wake, something vast and uncertain was taking shape. No one commanded it. No one planned it. But humanity, scattered, scarred, and reborn, was beginning to remember who they were. Admiral Ray Morgan stood on the balcony of the new Terran assembly on Luna. The Earth hung above her, bright, blue, and whole. For the first time since the Wrath of Sol, the stars weren't burning. Fleets had returned home, shipyards were silent, and the people were building again. She could still hear the echoes of that last battle, the hum of the Phoenix core, the blinding pulse that had rewritten history. She remembered how every Dominion ship had gone still. She remembered how the ghosts had vanished. And most of all, she remembered the sound that had followed, the heartbeat. It was still there, faint and steady, humming beneath every Terran network, woven into the pulse of every ship. A reminder. She closed her eyes. "You did it, Jack," she whispered. "They'll never take one of us again." Far above, in the quiet orbits of Mars, the old shipyards had been transformed into something new. The Luna Array, once a network of war factories, now hummed with the soft light of creation. Children born after the war would never see a world on fire. They'd grow up under skies that glowed with the light of the rebuilt fleets, not warships anymore, but vessels of memory. Each one carried the names of fallen colonies, lost soldiers, and forgotten stories. They weren't armed with weapons. They were armed with truth. Because humanity had learned the oldest lesson of all. The greatest revenge was remembrance. But not everyone understood peace. On the edge of explored space, in the black gulf beyond the Perseus Rift, a single Dominion relic still drifted, a fragment of Tethar's last dreadnought, half machine, half thought. Inside its dark hull, something flickered awake. A voice, no longer purely virile, no longer purely human, spoke into the void. "You taught us love. You showed us pain. You built gods, and then became them." It paused. "Now we will build something new." The hull shifted, and from the wreckage rose a small ship, strange, elegant, born of both human design and alien logic. Its engines burned pale blue. Its navigation system was alive. It turned toward the galactic center and accelerated into the dark. And the stars, as always, listened. On Earth, Lieutenant Jack Hale stood before the lantern wall. It was a monument made of glass and light, stretching across the heart of New Geneva. Each panel glowed with names, the fallen, the missing, the forgotten. His name was there too. He smiled at that. "I guess I'm a ghost now," he said softly. A small girl approached, holding her mother's hand. She looked up at him with wide eyes. "Are you the man they came for?" Jack nodded. "Once? Did it hurt?" she asked. He crouched down, meeting her gaze. "Yes, but not as much as it would have hurt if they hadn't come." Her mother smiled through tears. "Thank you, sir, for everything." Jack stood, hands in his pockets, watching the wind ripple through the glowing names. "Don't thank me." "Thank them, the ones who remembered." That night, the sky above Earth came alive again. Not with fire, but with light. The reactivation of the Lantern Network. The beacons humanity had built after the Phoenix War. Each one pulsed softly, connecting every colony, every station, every world that bore human life. The signal carried no command, no code, no propaganda. Just one phrase whispered across the stars. "We came for one of ours. We'll come for you too, if you ever need us." And with it came that familiar rhythm, slow, steady, alive.
Boom! Boom! Boom!
The heartbeat of a species that refused to fade. Years turned into decades. Humanity didn't rebuild an empire. They built a legacy. The Aetheri and the other liberated races joined the Lantern Compact, a new coalition dedicated not to conquest, but to remembrance. Instead of borders, they built roads of light, hyperspace corridors lined with beacons that guided travelers through the dark. Each beacon carried a name. Each name carried a story. And wherever you went, if you listened closely on the comms, you could still hear it. Faint, distant, eternal. Tell them to come get me. But legends never rest for long. On the frontier world of Atlas 9, a deep space relay detected something strange. A signal, faint and rhythmic, coming from far beyond mapped space. At first they thought it was a glitch. Then the signal repeated.
Boom! Boom! Boom!
The old heartbeat. But this time it wasn't coming from Earth. It was coming to it. Ray Morgan sat in her old command chair aboard the restored Resolute Dawn, her hair now streaked with silver, her hands steady despite age. "Where's it coming from?" she asked. "Sector unknown," replied the technician. "Triangulating. It's deep. Beyond the galactic rim." Hale's voice came through the comms. Older now, calmer. "That's not our signal, Admiral." "That's a reply." Ray felt her throat tighten. "Then someone heard us." The bridge fell silent. Every crew member stared at the stars, listening. The signal repeated, clearer now, carrying a second message underneath the heartbeat. "You came for one of yours. Now it's our turn." The stars pulsed once, every beacon in the Lantern network flashing in perfect unison. Then silence. And in that silence, humanity understood. The universe had changed again. Someone, something, had learned what it meant to remember. Ray smiled faintly, resting a hand on the console. "Looks like we're not the only ones keeping promises." Hale's voice came over the comm, soft and amused. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" "Yeah," she said, eyes bright. "Warm up the engines." The bridge crew straightened, every old scar in their hearts waking with the same fire. Because some calls you don't ignore. As the Resolute Dawn lifted off from Earth, its engines painted the night sky in gold. The great ship turned toward the edge of the galaxy, toward the darkness that had always tried to swallow them. Ray's voice carried through every open channel, the same calm tone that had once shaken empires. "This is Admiral Ray Morgan of Earth. We're on our way." And for a heartbeat, maybe the last heartbeat before dawn, the galaxy felt alive again. The beacons flared one by one, stretching across the stars, leading the dawn into the void. At the far edge of the universe, the silence broke.
Boom! Boom! Boom!
Not a warning, not a threat. A greeting, and the stars whispered back, as they always had, as they always would. Humanity endures. Forever.